to have some continuity in this debate. What kind of policies would you advocate regarding this issue of inclusiveness?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me welcome all of you, distinguished participants of our Congress and our President and leadership, and thank our Maltese hosts for great hospitality and great organization, and of course, leadership of EPP for their tireless work to make our party and the family more stronger and European future as better. So when we are talking about inclusive society, that's the most important issue for this time. In order to establish an inclusive society, it is decisive to engage individuals, first of all, and the process by which society is managed and represented. And main principles of inclusive society are respect for all human rights and fundamental freedoms, cultural and religious diversity, social justice, and support for the needs of vulnerable and disadvantaged groups, democratic participation and rule of law. Our policy frameworks must uphold and promote just and inclusive processes in all areas of implementation, and equal access to basic education, public space, facilities, and information must be ensured. Diversity and cultural pluralism should be respected. The function of strong civil society is essential for active participation and making public policies and institutions accountable. And I think one of the critical issues for the inclusive society is the fairness in distribution of wealth and resources. And it's a very critical issue. How the resources are distributed and utilized, it will significantly affect society's orientation, whether towards an integrated and inclusive society or an exclusive, segregated, and polarized one. We should advocate for the elimination of gender-based discrimination, child poverty, increase the social integration of people with disabilities, ethnic minorities, and immigrants. And of course, very important issue is effective leadership, and it's crucial to the development of an inclusive society. Building capacity in good governance, accountability and transparency at national and local levels will contribute significantly to this process.
How are the European democratic students thinking about the issue?
First of all, since I can abuse my time a little bit, since all the two of us, let me say it's a big honor and pleasure to be on a panel of such an important topic. Indeed, for true democratic societies, where all people feel valued and differences are respected, we need to do more for inclusion. And for this to turn into reality, we need to break down the obstacles we are facing at the moment and to promote the relevant policies. And that brings me to your question. There are quite a few areas that I could talk about on this topic. I will choose to speak about 3 areas. Which is jobs. Of course, we have heard a little bit, not a little bit, we've heard on the panel before about jobs. I will try to approach it from a different perspective. Then education and participation. So to begin with jobs, as in the center right, it's our firm position that jobs are created by the private sector. We therefore need to make it possible for the private market to do its job and provide our citizens with jobs. Therefore, how can we do it? Let's think about our taxation policies. Tax policy has a major influence on employment decisions and on investment decisions. And of course, taxation is a national policy, it's a national competence, and it should remain a national competence. However, Europe is behind in available private investments and equity investments compared, for example, to the US. Therefore, EU member states should encourage more equity investments. Then, for research and development, more innovation means more jobs. Therefore, let's invest more in the research and development sector. Second action in one sentence, too much bureaucracy leads to more people in exclusion rather than people in work and inclusion. We therefore need to reduce bureaucracy at European, national, and regional level. Then, About education, that leads me to my second point. Education systems have to modernize. They need to respond to the needs of the labor market, and we must make sure that we have people that are educated to the jobs that exist. Of course, we also need to match the higher education with the universities. And that brings me to my last point about participation.
Very shortly, please.
Very shortly, today we see the mistrust in politicians and political parties. Citizens think of politicians as a special species. We need to do something to change that. We need to re-engage with the public. We need to open up our structures and make it possible for more people to be engaged in our parties. But I think I will put a dot here.
Yes, how can we engage immigrants and refugees and people who are completely new to our culture, to our social culture, to our identity? The word identity has been used by the president a couple of minutes ago. That's clearly, to a lot of people, is one of the big issues. What is your point of view about inclusion regarding that problem?
Well, in a genuine inclusive societies, no one should be left behind. Therefore, it's important for both the individuals and the society as a whole, for those who come to Europe, to quickly integrate in our societies. Children must be able to quickly access the education system, whether the grown-ups should be able to quickly access the labor market. So their competence and education should be validated quickly once they arrive at the hosting country. For those who are not educated, then we should evaluate their skills and the competence they carry with them from their countries and to match them with jobs. So, of course, first of all, the most important tool is language. Language classes are essential. Then we can integrate refugees at community level, for example, with public transportation, free passes or metro, and of course the use of activities such as sports, which can encourage the team spirit. But also let's think about it policy-wise. Of course, we need to emphasize the need for strong anti-discrimination policies. However, at the same time, every refugee and immigrant who is coming in the EU territory should realize their obligation to accept and respect the European values. The EU will not accept any ideologies which are against the human rights and the fundamental values we all stand for. Finally, I also remember discussing this in one of the EPP political assemblies. In cases of separation of family members, it's important to bring the family together. That can have serious consequences on people's behavior and their ability to probably integrate within the society.
We have been discussing in the previous panel the problem of digitalization, the new kind of world that we're looking at, and we have briefly been touching the problem that elderly people have in following this rapid progress towards a kind of a new society. You as a young guy, how do you look at it?
Yes, it's a fact. We are witnessing the digital revolution now. However, as we heard from the previous panel, the digital revolution also brings some risks. The risk that if we don't have workforce which at least has the basic digital skills, that can actually gradually reduce jobs. So what can we do to avoid that? Well, as a student organization, we always advocate for the importance of massive open online courses, known as MOOCs, which can provide entire degrees to individuals via the internet. We encourage young people to do so, and we encourage the elders to do so as well. In addition to this, to the best of my knowledge, the European Social Fund can be used by companies who support the development of digital skills as part of investing in human capital. For the period 2014 to 2020, there is 18 billion budget allocated to that cause. Likewise, member states should support initiatives and organizations that encourage and train digital illiteracy. Last point, at the community level, let's make sure to leverage the community infrastructures, libraries, retirement villages, community centers to support seniors to develop their digital skills.
Mr. Tsereteli, coming back to you, the organization that you're chairman of, the OSCE, is playing an important, a critical role outside of the European Union regarding peacekeeping and regarding the prosperity safeguarding. What measures do you take or would you advocate at this moment in time?
Thank you for this question. Let's start with some general things about the OSCE. We are talking about inclusiveness of the society, and OSCE itself, it's an inclusive platform for dialogue with 4 decades of experience, bringing different stakeholders, very different stakeholders. together around one table. OSCE's key pillar is the Helsinki Final Act, through which inviolability of borders in Europe, it was pledged by all major powers. This really very rock-solid commitment of never to revise borders through force is one of the key priorities of the security architecture of Europe today. This week we mark 60th anniversary of Rome Treaty, and the EU is rightly praised as an engine of longest-lasting, peaceful and prosperous era in the history of the continent riddled with wars. But we also should give due credit to the Helsinki Final Act and continue to strive to defend its spirit. Very unfortunately, we all been witnesses in very recent years what happened and how those principles are violated in Georgia, in country which I represent, and also in Ukraine, with its grave consequences, which are still going on. So the OSCE is first and foremost is a security organization with its major contributions for enduring engagement in conflict prevention, conflict resolution, and post-conflict rehabilitation. So it's a whole cycle for conflicts. At the same time, OSCE support for confidence and security building measures through armed controls, military transparency, and dialogue, which is equally important for stability and sustainable development. It's an empirical fact that democracies do not fight each other. Since transformation of the OSCE and the establishment of the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, support of democracy, and particularly the free and fair elections, has been our organization's key input to the foundation of peace and prosperity in Europe. And I also would like to add that we are very active to promote good governance, and we think that good governance and democratization, it's really our key pillars for the peace and security in Europe.
Thank you. To wrap up this discussion about the inclusive society of the future, to you, the question, how can concrete day-to-day life political measures strengthen positive cohesion in our society?
I think this is actually the most important question of this panel. The stability of social system, as we have seen recently, can very suddenly break down. What happened with Brexit, what happened with President Trump elections in the States. And unfortunately, at this moment, there is quite a bit divide within our societies. And this is mainly due to the well-known problems our union is facing. Therefore, political parties which do have their own ideologies, such as ours, which is the party that basically shaped Europe as we know it today, we need to stop simply reacting to the solutions provided from the populists, but we need to regain the initiative in the public debate, as we're actually doing at the moment. For example, look at the implementation of the European Border and Coast Guard. Therefore, the European citizens, of course, they want to see more action in the fight against terrorism, they want to see more jobs, they want to see a solution with the issue of migration. And as long as these problems I have just mentioned remain priorities in the agenda of the governments, then populistic parties will remain able to divide the societies with their nationalistic and extremist positions. Therefore, in the next year, we need a vision, a stronger cooperation within all the levels of the societies. In my opinion, the liberal wave we are witnessing today, it will eventually go away. However, in the meantime, we must make sure to minimize the damage.
Mr. Chatzigeorgiou, Mr. Tsereteli, thank you very much for your intervention.
Thank you.
Very much.